Hey there YouTube, it's Brainfreeze Laser, and today we're going to be reviewing two cards that I think are underrated. Actually, one was suggested to me by a viewer, and the other is a card that I recently found out when playing gadgets and other builds. The two cards are going to be Magic Cylinder, and Dimension Slice. Now we'll talk about Magic Cylinder second, because I think I have a little more to say about that than Dimension Slice. Dimension Slice is pretty cut and dry, but I think it's pretty good. So Dimension Slice says, when you special summon a monster this turn, you can activate it and banish one face-up monster your opponent controls. If you were to special summon an Exceed monster, you can activate this card the turn it is set. Okay, now that's interesting, because essentially I think there is only one other card that lets you do that. I can't remember if it's just a card or if I'm confusing it with Makiora. The Makiora lets you activate cards, I think, from your hand. But that's really powerful. Being able to activate a trap the turn you set it is really good, because it essentially becomes a spell that you set first. And with today's special summoning being primarily Exceed monsters, you're probably going to be able to banish something really easily and really quickly. I don't ever see this card in any decks. I don't know why. Everybody special summons left and right. You know, yeah, you have to set it first, but you have to set evac, you have to set bottomless, you have to set, you know, all that stuff. So, I mean, you can even use it on your opponent's turn. You can call the Haunted, special summon out a monster, gain an effect like Stratos or whatever, and Dimension Slice or something, you know, or play it in Dark World. It's probably suggested for Dark World because Grapha is on the card. You know, so you special summon out a Dark World monster, Dimension Slice. You know, I like using it in my gadget deck because you exceed a lot, and so I can, you know, if somebody has a Stardust or something that can't be destroyed on the board, I look over there, you know, okay, what do you got? Oh, let me exceed into Gear Again X or whatever, banish, you know, it's good to go. I really like that card a lot. I think it's very underrated and overlooked because of other cards that people play. You know, a lot of the top players play evacs, bottomlesses, you know, the counters. The counters are always really good, you know, but just stuff like that. Cards are, you know, if cards are overlooked, they're never given a chance, and then once they're given a chance and they top, then people start to think that they're good. So, you know, I think that Dimension Slice might see a little more play, you know, if people start realizing that they're special summoning a lot. So that's basically Dimension Slice. Now, Magic Cylinder is a very old card. It's from Labyrinth of Nightmare, I think, and essentially it's not even pseudo removal. It just basically negates an attack, but it rebounds the damage that you would have taken from the attack back to your opponent. So it's kind of like Honest or a Kalut or something like that in trap form. So basically what you would do is you would set your, you know, set your monster or whatever, or summon a monster that you want to keep protected. Hopefully your opponent doesn't have a heavy or mystical or night beam, you know, or breaker or any number of ST removal. And then they go to swing in. They hit a cylinder, you still have your monster on board, you can, you know, normal summon your other monster, a special summon or whatever, go into an Exceed, you kept yourself good for a turn. The issue with Cylinder, you know, which I just basically explained in that, you know, situation, was that ST removal is at an all-time high. It is very difficult to keep cards on the board because your opponents play so many ST removal. You know, 3 Mysticals, 3 Night Beams, 3 Dusts, 1 Heavy, you know, 3 Breakers. And there's also all sorts of variants of other stuff, just regular, you know, a regular heavy storm, and then there's storm where you have to destroy your own stuff. There's a double cyclone. There's tornado. There's you know, all sorts of things. There's all so much removal. Monarchs, you know, just all sorts. There's just so much removal that exists in Yu-Gi right now. It's crazy the amount of removal there is, as opposed to maybe like, you know, 5 or 6 years ago when there was just 3 MSTs and a heavy. Or just 3 MSTs and, you know, the giant grenade. Or, you know, I'm pretty sure MST got limited at some point. So there was like maybe 1 or 2 MSTs and then whatever. But you have 3 MSTs. You know, oh yeah, it was limited because I remember when it got unlimited, you know, people weren't playing 3. People weren't playing 3 MSTs. I remember playing 3 MSTs forever. You couldn't keep anything on the board, and now you can't keep anything on the board, especially in Japan. Japanese players love to play ST removal. Just, you don't keep anything on the board. They play so much ST removal and so much backfield that their decks consist of very minimal amount of monsters. But I'm going very off track. Basically, this video is about Cylinder and Dimension Slice, and we're on Cylinder. And Cylinder is a good card if your opponent doesn't expect it and if they don't have an answer. And that's basically can be said about most backfield cards. Is, you know, if your opponent doesn't expect it and they don't have an answer, then they're probably going to get hit by it. But if they expect it and they go, I don't know, should I attack into that? What if it's a Mirror Force? Or what if it's a Cylinder? Or what if it's a D-Prison? Then they're usually pretty cautious until they can hit it. You know, and I don't think there's an Exceed that hits backfield. There might be. You know, don't quote me on that, but I'm not familiar with all the Exceeds. Some of the Exceeds are a little, you know, a little more difficult to get out. But there are plenty of Synchros, plenty of, you know, regular effect monsters, Mobius, Celestia, you know, just all sorts of monsters that just hit backfield. There's a Kokimaru monster. You know, there's a lot of just breaker. You can bring out a breaker and pop something. You know, if it isn't a bottomless or a warning, you're gonna get that breaker off. So basically, you know, the downfall of Cylinder is the same downfall of any ST card, and it's that it isn't reactive. It's too slow. Essentially, you can't chain it, and there's so much ST removal that it's just like ridiculous. That's why we have 2 Mirror Forces. That's why we have 2 Tarantulas. You know, that's why there's 3 Swords of Revealing Light, and you know, all sorts of stuff like that. Because of the amount of backfield that they're playing in Japan, I think they're playing like 18 to 20 backfield cards. So, you know, thank Japan for that. But essentially, like, I really like playing backfield per se. I usually only play 4 traps, but I'll play like a lot of mysticals and, you know, stuff like that. I've been trying to play more traps that go into combos and stuff, but essentially, Cylinder isn't bad. I'm not saying it's bad. I like Cylinder. I've been killed by Cylinder before. You know, I know WK Dad said he lost, you know, a tournament basically because of Cylinder. But essentially, it's just too slow for right now. There's so much ST removal, you know, going around that it isn't really a viable option, I would say, in that effect. But essentially, that's basically it. You know, it has a very powerful effect. Cylinder deals damage to you. You know, if somebody brings out an Excalibur and doesn't expect you to have a Mirror Force or doesn't expect you to have a Cylinder, you know, and they just blindly attack you, they basically took off half of their life points. You know, assuming that at that point they didn't already have 6,000, 4,000 life points. So it could do some good for you. You know, it could essentially win you the game if your opponent has a big monster on the board. You know, you use it, you negate an attack, they just took 3,000. You know, they hit with a smaller monster, gores or something like that. You know, so you could set up some pretty crazy combos. But I think that because of the amount of ST removal that exists right now, that Cylinder is probably not the best option. It isn't removal, and it isn't pseudo removal. And pseudo removal is something that just puts something face down or back into a hand or back into a deck. You know, it didn't really get rid of it, it just put it somewhere else. Regular removal gets rid of something. And Cylinder does neither. Cylinder just negates an attack, which isn't a bad thing, but, you know, essentially it isn't what you're probably gonna want to play right now, unless you don't really care about getting into stuff. And if you play, you can play 3 Cylinders, so you know your opponent can't hit all of them. It's basically the same philosophy with Pot of Avarice. When Pot of Avarice was at 3, people were playing DD Crows, and players were scared to play Pot of Avarice, so nobody played it. And then players started to play it again because you're not gonna have a DD Crow every time I have a Pot of Avarice. So you're not going to have a mystical or something like that every time I have a Cylinder, but the chances are higher because there's so much ST removal. And that's basically my review of those 2 cards. I really like Dimension Slice. It's responsive. You can chain cards to it. You can special summon something from your graveyard with Call of the Hunted, or an effect from your hand, like a Gores, chain, Dimension Slice, banish a monster on the board, you know, something like that. But if you don't special summon, it's a dead card. You know, Cylinder, same thing. It's a ST removal is this card's worst enemy, and ST removal is at an all-time high. But I think they're both really underrated right now because of other cards that people are playing. You know, obviously the Solemns and, you know, other things, combo-based stuff that you can react with, like compulses and things like that. But yeah, so in the comment section below, tell me what you think about these 2 cards. Hit the like button if you like my video or not, and you can always subscribe here on YouTube to see when I put out new videos. And thanks for watching.